Well, thank you for inviting me here this morning. I'm very happy to be able to speak to you on behalf of Oak Park, since this is where the meeting is being held. So I'm sure you're aware Oak Park is a community of 52,000 people living in a 4.5 square mile area. We are diverse by income and race, and we take great pride in that. And that was one of the reasons that I think we're able to bring about what I hope will be a model for you to look at as well in terms of delivering high-quality early childhood services for all the children living in your community. So the Collaboration for Early Childhood began in 2000. Was initiated by the local elementary school district, District 97, which I was a board member at the time. And at that time, we have six governing bodies located in our 4.5 square miles. So all six of them joined together to talk about early childhood. The community has been struggling for decades now with a stubborn achievement gap, which it's been unable to close despite the best interests of our efforts of our elementary and secondary school districts. And people were really troubled by the fact that here in Oak Park, where we made great efforts to make sure that our elementary school district was high quality and met the needs of all the children who attend our schools, that our early learning experiences were widely varying. And they were very much dependent on a family's income, and they prepared children very, very differently for school, so that when our children entered kindergarten, we saw huge differences in their readiness level. And there had been the insight for some time that we needed to begin to do something about early childhood, but school districts weren't really set up to do that. All six of our jurisdictions work on early childhood in one way or another, through programming, through family support or licensing and all that kind of stuff. So they felt that they had a stake in that discussion. Early on, the decision was made to incorporate an organization as a not-for-profit, and that was done for two reasons. First of all, it was recognition that we needed a backbone organization that would bring together the many public and private service providers, and so that they could participate alongside the jurisdictions, and that we had a table that would be big enough and had a neutral party facilitating the discussion. A little bit about Oak Park. We have 5,400 children live in Oak Park and River Forest, where we think of ourselves in some ways as a unified community because all of our children attend the same high school. We have a separate high school district here. 800 of our children are at risk based on income, possible developmental delays, and family stresses. That may not seem like very many, but for us, it's just under 20% of our population. It's bigger than any elementary school district in the community, and it constitutes 25% of our high school population. So it's a significant group of children that we are concerned about. Most of our families have all parents working. There's outside care coming in. All of our families, we have a lot of diversity around income, but they were all reporting a lot of stress when it came to finding quality care, knowing where to go for resources and supports, or feeling isolated because Today is the final day for us to receive some bids for vendors to create a database for us that will warehouse all of our information. And what I would want to share with you about that is that we're measuring benchmarks that we believe unify the work and keep everybody focused on the activity as a whole, so that we're sharing information well and making sure that the programs are working effectively. Our benchmarks, this is our high school mascot, our benchmarks follow, I really like this, and it models the state's race to the top outcomes, but we're focused on child outcomes, but we're also interested in how our service delivery is working. We're interested in how well the systems are integrated. Are they working well locally, and to what extent are we interfacing effectively and aligning our work at the state level? So we're tracking benchmarks in all those ways, so you can imagine the number of data streams that we're going to have coming in as we measure our progress, and that's why we're receiving bids just today to begin to develop that kind of database. So this plan was adopted in 2009, and as you all know, at the end of 2008, the economy finally formally collapsed, and Illinois' state budget is still among the worst in the nation. It's funding streams that we believed would be available to us, that we'd be able to bring into Oak Park, no longer were available. And we found that foundation and private funding that had been supporting us moved away because they were interested in shoring up the state quality improvement systems, the rating systems they're using for childcare that Mr. Rolnick talked about, and that their policy work would also continue to improve. Oak Park's diversity is a strength that we have. We're very proud of it, but it's also a challenge because we have a wide range of children that are in our elementary schools and that are in our preschools, but we don't have the density of need. You can't come to us as a community and say 90% of our children are below poverty level. We don't have that. We might have 15% in one building, or 20% in another one, or 5% somewhere else. So we find that it's very hard to get those targeted kinds of programs. And then we also do not have control, like some municipalities, over our Head Start funding or our child care assistance programs. We have to work with the providers that receive those funds through other entities. So we have a lot of kind of cajoling and supporting to get them to braid and blend funding and to raise the standards that for their staff and for the quality of their programs. So those were some of our challenges. We knew then, by 2010, that if we were going to do something meaningful for early childhood in Oak Park as a community, it would need to be a local effort. And we were fortunate that the Village of Oak Park and our two elementary school districts really saw this as a stake in the ground issue for Oak Park if we were going to continue to be the successful community that we wanted to become. We were able then to launch into discussions that led to an intergovernmental agreement to support the development of this strategic plan that happened just this last April. And the value on that intergovernmental agreement over a 3-year period ramps up to $1.2 million. And the funding for that comes primarily out of general operating funds from the three entities, and it's based primarily on their property tax revenues. Okay. Some of the key components of the IGA, and this really gets into what was important to the jurisdictions in being able to make this happen, was that they needed to make sure that they had a strong rationale for the historical reasons, that there was statutory basis, especially for school districts, for them to be able to do this, and that it was research-based. We have a history of intergovernmental cooperation here in Oak Park, some of it successful, some of it not as successful. So they felt that it was very important to make sure that there would be a governance structure that was well articulated to oversee this agreement. It also establishes a clear administrative structure. For us, it's housed with the Elementary School District 97. It specifies very clearly the financial obligations of each entity and provides a process for them to terminate their involvement in the agreement every year should their fiscal position change. Okay. So how did we bring this about, especially in a down economic time? First of all, we tied it to the core values and the sense of mission that Oak Park has about itself. And I think that created a strong resonance for providers. We worked with the key leaders. David Pope was a very strong backer, as was Peter Barber, the Oak Park Elementary School District board member, and their voices, along with many others, helped us significantly. A core working group guided the effort. There's a strong public information campaign. We had strong editorial support from our public newspaper, and we had to have a funding formula that made sense. I think that was essential, and they were able to reach that fairly quickly in the discussions. Whoops, I have to go back. So I just wanted to share these two slides with you. I'm about done with my remarks, but these were the slides that we found had the most resonance. So the red is the local funding that's available for public education. And what this shows you is really the incredibly high value that Oak Park places on public education. So this is us. This is our tax base, okay? This is actually from 2008, but I can tell you that it hasn't changed. The slope of those bars has not changed that significantly. So we're very committed to equality of opportunity for all of our residents, making sure that our children become successful contributing members of society, and it's shown through our level of investment. But here is James Heckman's graph of his return on investment that Mr. Rolnick described earlier. And what it shows you is that you get your greatest returns early on, and that as you move out through the school years, that return on investment decreases dramatically. So we were able to convince people that what we had here in Oak Park was, an operational dissonance. We were making huge investments, but at the wrong time. So we argued that what we needed to do was to move that little sliver of red, just to increase that a little bit by effectively integrating and weaving these resources together, making sure we had a strong home visitation program to pick up that 0 to 3 and have high quality preschools available for all of our kids. Okay, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Ivy Taylor, and I'm a member of the City Council of San Antonio, Texas. I'm here representing my mayor, Julian Castro, who sends his greetings to you. And I also wanted to offer a special hello to Mayor Kleinschmidt because I'm a Tar Heel. I have a master's in city planning from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So that leads right into my disclaimer. I am not an expert on early childhood education. Most of what I've learned has come because I have a 9-year-old, and because I'm a city planner who started out my career focused on affordable housing, and about 10 years in realized that education was a really important component in order to help families to be successful in order for us to create thriving communities. So let me jump right into my presentation. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview about San Antonio to give you some context, and then I'm going to share with you about 3 initiatives that we have undertaken in San Antonio, and then hopefully leave you with some ideas on what you as mayors can do. So I'm not sure how well you can read these pie charts, but just to give you an overview, San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the U.S. We've got a population of about 1.4 million people. Our median household income is about $44,000, so not real high. We have about 19% of our population is below poverty. We're over 60% Hispanic in San Antonio. And we were talking about this at our table. We have about 16 independent school districts in the San Antonio area. And then these are some demographics about the preschool population, which shows that we have 20,000 4-year-olds living in the city of San Antonio. And at the bottom, it shows that we had a target population that could be served through a special program, which I'm going to talk about. Within your packet on page EC 29, under the Early Childhood Education tab, there's a little booklet on pre-K for SA, which is the first initiative that I'm going to talk to you about, and it's got some of the demographics in case you can't read it on the slide here. So let's tell you about Pre-K for SA. It was basically a focus of Mayor Castro. We had a little bit of capacity left in our sales tax. We had 1/8 of a cent left, and so the mayor, I hit something on the back. Okay, thank you so much. Let me put that down. The mayor wanted to determine what could we do with that 1/8 of a cent, that capacity that could have a huge impact on, a forward trajectory for our city. And so he put together a brain power task force who recommended, based on, some of the types of research that's already been discussed by some of the other panelists, that making an investment in early childhood education could have a tremendous impact. Of course, our 16 independent school districts were all offering some form of early childhood education, so we wanted to determine how we could augment that. So we developed a campaign that went out to the community, and the voters approved the initiative on November 6th of last year. I think it was about I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was maybe, about 58% approval. So pretty high rate of, folks who are skeptical of the program as well.